All right, so let's do this review WebAssign thing. First problem, number one, is this one where we have 1 kilometer races, and the runner on track 1, it takes a certain amount of time. So let's do runner 1 is on track 1. Well, duh. And he takes time T1 to run a distance L1. And runner 2 is track 2, duh, 2. Track 2 takes time L2. And what we want to know is the biggest difference L2 minus L1 in the track length that would let us believe that runner 1 is still faster. So what we're given is T1 and T2, and these lead us to believe runner 1 took slightly less time than runner 2. So these sort of lead us to believe that runner 1 is faster, but they were a little suspicious about the length of the track. So we want to find what's the maximum difference in the track. How much longer can L2 be than L1 to let us still believe that runner 1 is faster than runner 2. We're using positive displacement and a positive time, so we can just compare velocities directly. We don't have to worry about the difference between speed and velocity in this case. And what we're really looking for is what's sort of the minimum for this that would call the results into question. So at what point, if we had a certain difference between L2 and L1, at what point would that lead us to believe that actually they were running at the same speed? Well, that's a good question. So let's start from this. This is what we're really trying to find, the point where their speeds become even. So let's expand that, and V1 equals V2. What that really implies is that the distance divided by the time for each one is the same. So that implies that L1 over T1 equals L2 over T2. All right. Now, cross multiplying is one of our favorite things to do. We have fractions. So let's go ahead and cross multiply, and we can get that L1 T2 equals L2 T1. Now, where are we going with this? Well, there's an interesting little trick you can pull out at this point, where you say that L2 is equal to, actually, how do we want to do this? No, actually, let's do it the other way. Let's say that L1, no, one more time. Okay, let's really do it with L2. Sorry, this time I know what I'm doing. L2 equals L2 minus L1 plus L1. So all we've done really is we've added and subtracted. So we added L1 and subtracted L1 from L2. But what that really does is it gets us this idea that the length of L2 is equal to the length of L1 plus some difference between them. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's substitute that back in and see what kind of fancy things that lets us do. So this is, again, the equation we're working from here. So let's substitute in this thing here and see what happens. So L1 T2, which is the left side of that, is going to equal L2 minus L1 plus L1. We're going to bracket that whole thing because we're multiplying that all by T1. So what that gets us is L1 T2 equals, and now let's see, we have the L2 minus L1 times the T1, L2 minus L1 times T1 plus L1 times T1. Okay, well, now things are starting to look interesting. So if we take this term here and bring this over to this side, what we get is L1 times T2 minus T1. So that's just this term here minus this term. And that equals L2 minus L1 times T1. Well, well, well. Now this looks interesting. So we want to find this quantity here, this L2 minus L1. So it looks actually fairly easy at this point. L2 minus L1 equals, looks like L1 times T2 minus T1 over T1. Okay, well, let's plug some numbers in. So this is going to be our answer here. Let's plug some numbers in and see what happens. So for the problem I was given, T1 equals, let's see, 2 minutes and 28.10 seconds. So really, 2 minutes is 120 seconds. So the total is 148.10 seconds. T2 then is 2 minutes and 28.44 seconds. So that's 148.44 seconds. So T2 minus T1 is 0.34 seconds. All right. Now, L1, we didn't work this exactly, but we can say L1 was 1,000 meters, and we don't have, we don't have a precise measurement. We're trying to find the difference between L2 and L1, but we know that they're going to be, it's going to be about 1,000 meters. It's a 1 kilometer race. So now we take, let's see, and how much space do we have there? Yeah, we can do this. Okay, so let's do L2 minus L1 equals 1,000 meters times 0.34 seconds, and that's all divided by T1, which is 148.10 seconds. And so I forgot to get my real calculator out, so let's use our funky little Windows calculator. And I promise I will not pull this thing out again, but just this once. So 1,000 times 0.34 divided by 148.10 equals 2.3 meters. So our L2 minus L1 equals 2.3 meters. And if I plug this into WebAssign, cross your fingers for me, and I got it correct. So, sounds good.